When a man hurts you, your first instinct is to explain yourself, to talk more, to cry harder, to prove your worth louder. But listen to me carefully, that never confuses him, that feeds him. Men are not confused by tears. They are not shaken by long messages. They are not moved by you begging them to understand. Stop explaining your pain, not because what you feel is wrong, but because the person who keeps hurting you already understands. He just doesn't care enough to change. When you over-explain your pain, you think you're creating clarity. You believe that if you say it one more time in a softer tone, with better words, he'll finally get it. But here's the truth most people avoid. A man who respects you doesn't need a detailed presentation of your hurt. He notices the first time. He listens the first time. And he adjusts the first time. When someone keeps asking you to explain how they hurt you, it's not confusion, it's convenience. Every time you explain, you're not educating him. You're training him. You're teaching him that your pain is negotiable, that your boundaries come with explanations, and that he can cross the line as long as you're willing to talk about it afterward. Over-explaining becomes emotional labor, and emotional labor becomes permission. He learns that hurting you doesn't cost him anything except a conversation. And here's what hurts the most. The more you explain, the smaller you start to feel. You begin to doubt your own reactions. You wonder if you're too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding. You start rehearsing your pain in your head, choosing words carefully so you don't sound crazy or dramatic. That's when the balance of power quietly shifts. You're no longer standing in your truth. You're defending it. Silence, on the other hand, does something very different. Silence doesn't argue. Silence doesn't justify. Silence doesn't chase understanding. Silence says, I know what I felt, and I don't need you to validate it. When you stop explaining, you remove his access to your emotional energy, and that's when things change. A man who benefits from your explanations feels safe when you talk. He knows that as long as you're speaking, you're still attached. But when you go quiet, not in anger, not in manipulation, but in self-respect, he loses his script. He doesn't know whether you're done, detached, or simply seeing him clearly for the first time. That uncertainty is uncomfortable because now he has to sit with his own actions instead of your emotions. Silence takes your power back because it puts responsibility where it belongs. You stop carrying the burden of making him understand. You stop translating your pain into words he can ignore. You stop performing emotional vulnerability for someone who has shown you repeatedly that they done and handle it with care. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you're fine. It means choosing the right audience. Your pain deserves empathy, safety, and accountability, not defensiveness or excuses. When someone shows you that they only listen to respond, not to change, your silence becomes a boundary. And boundaries don't need long explanations. There's also a deeper shift that happens when you stop explaining. You begin to trust yourself again. You no longer look outward for permission to feel hurt. You stop asking, was it really that bad? And start saying, it was enough for me to step back. That inner clarity is powerful. It steadies you, it grounds you, and it makes your presence different. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you've said enough. It means you've realized that respect is shown through behavior, not words. And when someone continues to hurt you despite knowing how it affects you, the most self-respecting response is not another explanation, it's distance. Because the truth is, people who truly value you don't need repeated reminders of how to treat you. And people who rely on your explanations are relying on your tolerance. So stop explaining your pain, not to punish him, but to protect yourself. Let your quiet be the message. Let your absence of overgiving speak. Let your standards replace your speeches. Silence isn't weakness, it's clarity, and clarity is power. Silence creates uncertainty because it breaks the pattern he has grown comfortable with. When you stop reacting the way he expects, you don't just change the conversation, you change the entire dynamic. A man who has hurt you often relies on predictability. He knows how you'll respond. He knows you'll ask questions, seek reassurance, express hurt, or try to fix what's broken. That predictability gives him control. It allows him to move through the relationship without ever truly examining his actions. When you remove that reaction, something shifts. Suddenly, there is no emotional feedback to guide him, no tears to confirm he still matters, no anger to reassure him that you're still invested, no explanations to soften the impact of his behavior. Silence creates a vacuum, and human beings are deeply uncomfortable with vacuums. In that space, the mind starts working overtime. At first, he may assume you're just cooling off. Then he notices you're not reaching out, you're not engaging the way you used to, you're not asking for clarity or reassurance. That's when the questions begin. Is she done? Did I push her too far? Is she talking to someone else? Did she finally see me for who I am? The uncertainty grows because he no longer has access to your emotional state. What makes this powerful is not the silence itself, but the intention behind it. This isn't the silent treatment used to manipulate or punish. This is the silence that comes from self-respect. It's the pause that happens when you realize reacting hasn't protected you and explaining hasn't changed him. It's the moment you decide to step back and observe instead of participate in your own hurt. When you stop reacting, he loses the ability to measure his importance in your life. Men who hurt often still want reassurance that they matter. Your reactions, even the painful ones, give them that reassurance. Silence removes it. And without that emotional mirror, he's left alone with his thoughts, his choices, and their consequences. Uncertainty forces reflection. When there's no immediate emotional response from you, he has to replay moments in his head. He remembers the times you spoke up, the warnings you gave, the chances you extended. And now, without your voice filling the space, those memories get louder. Silence amplifies what words tried to soften. Meanwhile, something else is happening on your side. As you stop reacting, your nervous system begins to settle. You're no longer in a constant state of emotional response. You start thinking clearly. You gain distance from the chaos. That clarity allows you to see the relationship as it truly is, not as you hoped it would be. And that shift changes your energy completely. He feels that change, even if he can't name it. Your calm confuses him because it doesn't match the version of you he's used to. You're no longer emotionally accessible on demand. You're no longer available for late-night explanations or circular conversations. You're not trying to convince him of your worth. That unfamiliar version of you unsettles him. Silence also communicates boundaries without a single word. It says, I will not engage in what hurts me. It says, I am no longer available for confusion or disrespect. And unlike words, silence can't be argued with. There's nothing to twist, minimize, or dismiss. It simply exists. The uncertainty he feels isn't about losing control over you. It's about losing certainty over the outcome. He doesn't know if you're still emotionally invested. He doesn't know if you've detached. He doesn't know if you've decided to walk away. And not knowing forces him to confront a possibility he avoided before, that he could actually lose you. Silence shifts the power dynamic because it puts you back at the center of your own experience. You're no longer reacting to his behavior. You're responding to your own needs. And that inner alignment shows. It changes the way you carry yourself. It changes the way you speak when you do choose to speak. It changes what you tolerate. When you stop reacting the way he expects, you don't have to say anything dramatic. Your absence of reaction becomes the message. And in that quiet space, while he is questioning everything, you are finally listening to yourself. That's the real purpose of silence. Not to confuse him, but to clarify you. Peace is more powerful than drama because it represents control over yourself, and self-control is something that cannot be manipulated, provoked, or dismissed. When a man hurts you, he often expects an emotional response. He expects anger, tears, accusations, or endless conversations trying to resolve what he has already decided not to fix. Drama, to him, is familiar. It fits a pattern he understands. But calm confidence, that unsettles him in ways emotion never could. Anger tells him he still has access to your emotions. Tears tell him you are still deeply invested. Even arguments, no matter how painful, signal that you are still fighting for the connection. To a man who has caused harm, emotional intensity often feels like proof of importance. He may not admit it, but your reactions reassure him that he still matters in your life. Peace removes that reassurance. Calm confidence doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't plead or threaten. It doesn't explain itself repeatedly. It simply stands firm. When you respond with composure instead of chaos, he can't predict your next move. He can't push your buttons the way he used to. He can't escalate the situation to regain control. And because he doesn't understand it, it confuses him. Peace changes the emotional temperature of the situation. Where there was once tension, there is now stillness. Where there was once back and forth, there is now space. That space forces him to confront something uncomfortable. Your strength does not depend on his behavior. You are not unraveling. You are not collapsing. You are not begging him to choose you. You are steady, and steadiness is intimidating to someone who expected you to break. Calm confidence sends a powerful, unspoken message. It says you know who you are. It says you trust your judgment. It says you don't need to prove your worth through emotional performance. When a man realizes that he no longer has the power to disrupt your inner peace, he starts questioning his place in your life. Not because you threatened to leave, but because you no longer need him to feel whole. Drama keeps you tied to the moment of hurt. Peace moves you beyond it. Drama replays the wound again and again, hoping for acknowledgement or apology. Peace accepts the truth without needing validation. It recognizes patterns instead of promises. And that shift changes how you respond to everything. There is also dignity in peace. When you remain calm, you preserve your self-respect. You don't say things you later regret. You don't lose yourself in emotional reactions that leave you drained. You act from clarity instead of impulse. That clarity sharpens your boundaries and strengthens your presence. For the man who caused the pain, this is deeply confusing. He expected emotional chaos, not emotional maturity. He expected you to chase closure, not choose composure. He expected a reaction that would keep the focus on his feelings or his justification. Instead, your peace redirects the focus back to you. Calm confidence also changes the power dynamic. It shows that you are no longer operating from fear of loss. You are not afraid to be alone. You are not afraid of his silence or his distance. That fearlessness removes leverage. Without leverage, manipulation loses its effectiveness. Peace doesn't mean indifference. It means discernment. It means you have decided where your energy belongs and where it doesn't. You may still feel deeply, but you no longer allow those feelings to control your behavior. That emotional discipline is rare, and it commands respect, even from those who once took you for granted. When you choose peace over drama, you give yourself freedom. Freedom from emotional exhaustion, freedom from repeating the same arguments, freedom from waiting for someone to become who they've shown you they're not. That freedom radiates outward. It changes how people see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Calm confidence confuses a man because it removes the battlefield. There is nothing to fight against, nothing to provoke, nothing to blame. All that remains is the reality of his actions and the consequences they carry. And while he is trying to understand what changed, you are already moving forward, grounded, centered, and unshaken. Peace is not passive. It is a decision to protect your inner world, to honor your boundaries, and to stop engaging in what costs you your well-being. And in that choice, you reclaim a power far greater than drama could ever give you. Choosing standards over emotions is one of the hardest but most powerful decisions you will ever make, because emotions are loud and urgent while standards are quiet and steady. When a man hurts you, emotions push you to react immediately. They urge you to argue, to explain, to demand answers, or to issue ultimatums in the hope that fear of losing you will finally make him change. But emotions fade, standards stay, and self-respect, rooted in standards, protects you in ways arguments and ultimatums never can. Arguments feel productive in the moment. You get to express your pain, defend your feelings, and point out what went wrong. Ultimatums feel empowering because they create the illusion of control. You tell yourself that if he truly cares, he will choose you this time. But the truth is, neither arguments nor ultimatums address the real issue. They keep you locked in reaction mode, responding to his behavior instead of setting the conditions for your own peace. Self-respect shifts the focus entirely. It's not about convincing him to act right. It's about deciding what you will and will not accept. Standards are internal rules you live by, regardless of who is in front of you. They don't require long speeches or emotional appeals. They simply guide your actions. When your standards are clear, you no longer need to threaten to leave. Your behavior already reflects your boundaries. Emotions ask, how can I make him understand? Standards ask, does this align with the life I'm building? That difference changes everything. When you lead with emotions, you give away leverage. You show him exactly where you're hurt, exactly what you fear, and exactly how much you're willing to fight to keep him. Some men respond to that with empathy, but men who repeatedly hurt you often respond with complacency. They learn that no matter what they do, you'll stay long enough to argue about it. Standards remove that safety net. When you stop arguing and start enforcing, your actions speak louder than any ultimatum ever could. You don't need to say, if you do this again, I'm gone. You simply become less available to behavior that violates your values. You step back. You withdraw access. You protect your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. Self-respect also keeps you from negotiating your own worth. Arguments often turn into bargaining sessions where you minimize your needs just to keep the peace. You accept half apologies, temporary changes, and empty promises because your emotions want resolution. Standards don't bargain. They don't settle for potential. They respond to patterns, not promises. This is where real protection comes in. Self-respect shields you from repeated disappointment. It prevents you from staying too long in situations that drain you. It stops you from chasing people who have already shown you who they are. When you honor your standards, you don't need to monitor his behavior constantly. You already know what you'll do if the line is crossed. There is also a deep sense of calm that comes with living by standards. You're no longer on an emotional roller coaster, reacting to every high and low. You're grounded. You trust yourself. You know that even if the relationship ends, you will be okay because you didn't abandon your values to keep someone else comfortable. To a man who is used to emotional reactions, this is confusing. He expects arguments, tears, and ultimatums. He expects you to fight for him. When instead he encounters quiet consistency, he's forced to face a reality he can't manipulate. He realizes that your presence in his life is not guaranteed. It's earned. Standards don't make you cold. They make you clear. You can still love deeply, care sincerely, and feel intensely. The difference is that your feelings no longer override your self-respect. You stow P, choosing temporary comfort over long-term peace. Arguments try to change him. Ultimatums try to scare him. Standards change you. And when you change, everything else follows. Self-respect is not about proving a point. It's about protecting your future. It's about choosing relationships that meet you at your level, not ones that require you to shrink, explain, or endure. When you place standards over emotions, you stop asking for better treatment and start allowing only what aligns with your worth. That is how self-respect protects you, quietly, consistently, and powerfully. Long after the emotions have faded, unavailability ends disrespect because disrespect only survives where there is access. When someone can mistreat you and still reach you, still talk to you, still benefit from your presence, there is no real consequence to their behavior. They may apologize, explain, or promise change, But deep down, they know they haven't lost anything. Access without accountability teaches people that your boundaries are flexible and your self-worth is negotiable. When access to you is removed, everything changes. The dynamic shifts because the reward disappears. The attention, emotional support, comfort, and consistency you once offered are no longer freely available. And without those benefits, disrespect no longer has a place to land. It loses its power. Unavailability is not about playing games or acting cold. It's about recognizing that access to you is a privilege, not a right. When someone repeatedly disrespects you, they forfeit that privilege. You don't need a dramatic exit or a long explanation. Your absence communicates what words never could. Disrespect thrives on familiarity. It grows when someone believes you'll always be there, no matter how they behave. It shows up when they feel entitled to your time, your body, your emotions, and your forgiveness. The moment you remove access, that entitlement is challenged. Suddenly, they can't reach you whenever they want. They can't unload their emotions onto you. They can't enjoy the benefits of your presence while ignoring your needs. For the person who disrespected you, this is jarring. They expected tolerance, not consequences. They expected another chance, not distance. They expected you to stay available while they figured themselves out. Your unavailability interrupts that expectation. What's important to understand is that unavailability doesn't mean silence forever. It means you are no longer accessible to behavior that costs you your peace. You choose when and how you engage. You stop responding out of habit or guilt. You stop making yourself available to people who have shown you they don't handle access responsibly. This is where your power returns. When you're always available, you are always exposed. Exposed to disrespect, to emotional drain, to inconsistency. Unavailability creates protection. It gives you space to think clearly, to heal, and to reconnect with your own needs. It removes you from environments that constantly trigger hurt. Disrespect loses its reward because there is nothing left to gain. No attention, no emotional reassurance, no comfort, no validation. When someone realizes that hurting you means losing you, the cost becomes real. Some will reflect and change. Others will walk away. Either outcome protects you. Unavailability also restores balance. Relationships should involve mutual effort and consideration. When you are constantly available, you often end up doing more forgiving, more understanding, more adjusting. By pulling back, you allow the relationship to reveal its true nature. If it collapses without your overgiving, it was never sustainable to begin with. There is strength in choosing yourself over access. It takes courage to step back when you care. It takes discipline to resist the urge to respond, explain, or fix. But that discipline is an act of self-respect. It tells the world and yourself that your time and energy are valuable. For many people, the hardest part is letting go of the hope that availability will eventually earn respect. But respect is not earned through endurance. It is established through boundaries. When you remove access, you draw a clear line between what you allow and what you don't. Unavailability doesn't make you unloving. It makes you discerning. You can still be kind, compassionate, and understanding without being accessible to harm. You can still wish someone well without staying within reach of their disrespect. In the quiet space that unavailability creates, clarity emerges. You see patterns more clearly. You recognize how much you were giving and how little you were receiving. You remember who you were before you tolerated less than you deserved. That clarity is freeing. When access to you is removed, disrespect loses its reward because there is no longer an audience, no longer a benefit, no longer a guarantee. And in that absence, you reclaim something far more valuable than their approval. You reclaim your peace. Unavailability is not withdrawal out of fear. It is withdrawal out of wisdom. It is the moment you stop offering yourself to those who cannot honor you. And that decision changes everything. Choosing yourself is the real power because it shifts the focus from what was taken from you to what you still own. When you've been hurt, every emotion pushes you toward reaction. Anger wants revenge. Pain wants acknowledgement. Ego wants to prove a point. But none of those responses heal you. They keep you tied to the person who caused the wound. Self-worth, on the other hand, releases you from that grip. Revenge feels powerful at first because it promises balance. It tells you that if the other person feels even a fraction of your pain, justice will be restored. But revenge keeps your energy locked in the past. It makes your healing dependent on someone else's suffering. And as long as your peace depends on their reaction, you are not free. Self-worth is quieter, but it is far stronger. It doesn't seek to hurt back. It seeks to move forward. When you choose yourself, you refuse to let pain dictate your future. You acknowledge what happened without letting it define you. That choice requires maturity, courage, and deep inner strength. Choosing yourself means you stop asking, how do I make them regret hurting me? And start asking, how do I protect my heart from being hurt again? That shift is powerful because it puts responsibility back in your hands. You are no longer waiting for closure, apologies, or consequences. You create your own closure through your actions. Self-worth doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up in what you no longer tolerate. It shows up in the boundaries you set and keep. It shows up in the way you walk away without needing the other person to understand why. When you choose yourself, you don't need revenge, because your life becomes the proof that you healed, grew, and moved on. There is also dignity in choosing yourself. Revenge often lowers you to a place that doesn't reflect who you truly are. It pulls you into behavior driven by hurt rather than values. Self-worth keeps you aligned with your character. You don't abandon your integrity just because someone else did. Choosing yourself also breaks emotional attachment to the pain. When you focus on retaliation, you replay the hurt again and again. You relive conversations, imagine scenarios, and keep wounds open. Self-worth allows you to grieve without staying stuck. It gives you permission to feel, process, and then release. One of the most empowering aspects of self-worth is that it doesn't require validation. You don't need the other person to admit fault or feel guilty. You trust your own experience. You honor your feelings without needing them to confirm them. That independence is true power. Choosing yourself means investing your energy where it can grow. You redirect attention from what broke you to what can rebuild you. Your goals, your health, your peace, your future. Each step you take toward yourself weakens the hold the hurt once had over you. To the person who hurt you, this response is unexpected. They may have anticipated anger, confrontation, or retaliation. Instead, they see distance, growth, calm, and while revenge seeks to wound, self-worth silently demonstrates what they lost access to, not because you wanted to punish them, but because you chose to honor yourself. Self-worth also teaches you discernment. You begin to recognize red flags sooner. You stop making excuses for behavior that doesn't align with your values. You choose connections that feel safe, respectful, and consistent. That awareness is a gift born from pain but refined through self-respect. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing your well-being for someone else's comfort. It means you accept that walking away can be an act of love toward yourself, even if it disappoints others. The strongest response to being hurt is not revenge, because revenge keeps you connected to the wound. Self-worth frees you from it. It allows you to rise above the situation without denying its impact. It lets you carry the lesson, not the bitterness. When you choose yourself, you reclaim your power quietly and completely. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Your peace becomes your victory. Your growth becomes your answer. And your self-worth becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. And here's the truth that brings everything together. When a man hurts you, the real shift doesn't happen when you explain more, argue harder, or try to make him feel your pain. The shift happens the moment you stop abandoning yourself. Silence creates space. Peace restores your power. Standards protect your heart. Unavailability removes the reward for disrespect, and choosing yourself frees you from the need for revenge. You were never meant to fight for basic respect. You were never meant to prove your worth through pain. The strongest move you can make is not emotional, it's intentional. It's deciding that your self-respect matters more than his confusion, his validation, or his approval. When you choose calm over chaos, standards over emotions, and self-worth over revenge, you stop reacting to hurt and start rising above it. And that is when everything changes. Not because he changed, but because you did. If this message spoke to you, if you felt seen or understood, Donna, keep it to yourself. Comment below and share which part hit you the hardest or what you're choosing to release today. Your voice matters, your healing matters, and choosing yourself is always the real power.